It's very much like champagne. Champagne is about blending different varietal from different cru villages from different years. So here it's about the same thing. We are blending different Chardonnay from that plot, and what's gonna make it very unusual is that the first bottle G that you tasted is a blend of 1 year, but the next one will be a blend of 2 years, and the next one after that will be a blend of 3 different years. So as the years gonna go by, we will always blend 2, 3, maybe 4, I don't know, vintages in order to have a consistent one that will be year after year better than the previous wine.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are at an away game here today in Laguna Beach, about to have a conversation with Francois Peltereau-Villeneuve.
Good so far.
The other day we had lunch together, and he introduced a wine to a bunch of media and the wine. It was a wine trade. It was very fascinating stuff. But welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm not going to say the chateau because I already wrote it down wrong. Château
La Gaffelière.
La Gaffelière.
La Gaffelière from Saint-Emilion.
You know, you would think. I mean, I literally take French twice a week.
Yeah, you should. You should be fluent. You should be fluent.
I should be able to see that by now.
Yeah.
But you know, you're here. We're here in Laguna Beach, and I didn't understand when we were at Wally's in Beverly Hills, a famous restaurant. They also have a restaurant in Las Vegas and Santa Monica, which is we'll talk about that a little bit. A fascinating idea. But you are here in you are in Southern California, mm-hmm. but you travel the States, mm-hmm. and you are promoting which brands?
Well, Château La Gaffelière.
Okay.
Château La Gaffelière, which is a Grand Cru Glacé from Saint-Emilion. It's been in Saint-Emilion for more than 300 years. The family, the Malais-Roquefort family, established Château La Gaffelière back in 1705. So it's actually very old property. Yeah. Yeah. They were the first family to set camp in Saint-Emilion, again, more than 300 years ago. Yep.
So, and we were talking about that. Let's touch on that just for the listeners, because in 1855, Napoleon III, the grandnephew of the famed general, had a classification on the left bank of Bordeaux, left of the Gironde. No, left of the Dordogne.
The left bank, yes.
Yes, left bank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and it was basically the negociants and the price point of the wines at the time. It established what we now call the Grand Cru classification. But on the right bank, where there's formidable wineries to be had, they did it 100 years later.
Correct, in 1955.
Wow.
Yeah, and there is a big difference between the left bank and the right bank in the classification, in that sense that the one from 1855, the left bank, so the Médoc, basically, the classification that was set back then is still valid today. So there is no big changes. If you are classified as a first growth, second growth, third growth, or whatever, anywhere between 1 and 5, this is the classification you had back in the days. This is what you are today. There are very, almost no example. I mean, there are less than a handful of examples of chateaux that are able to go from 5th to 4, 4 to 3rd, or 2 to 1. On the right bank, on the opposite, the classification from 1955, the classification makes it mandatory to reapply for that status every 10 years. So it forces, in theory, the chateau to be on their toes to really make sure that the quality is there, because every 10 years again there is a reevaluation of the classification.
So this is what's fascinating, and we were talking about Château Lagrange the other day, and he mentioned during the podcast that the classification of 1855 did not specify the vineyards. In other words, if Château Lagrange decided they wanted to buy more vineyards, they could buy more vineyards, and the grapes from that vineyards would qualify for the Grand Cru Classé, whatever level they were at. And I thought that was really fascinating. That's not the case in the right bank. You are submitting everything every 10 years as to who you are and what you are and what's going on.
You have to reevaluate. So it's correct. So every 10 years, you have to basically submit samples from the 10 previous vintages. These are part of the criteria in order to keep the classification or not. But the thing is, in 2022, they kind of reevaluated all the criteria, not just the one about the tasting and the wine itself. Mm-hmm. They added criteria that didn't really make any sense for us, like visitor centers, size of a parking lot, or stuff that
Really?
have nothing to do. So stuff that have nothing to do with the wine itself. So basically, alongside with 2 or 3 other very famous chateau, we decided to leave that classification in 2022. So as of the 2022 vintage, Château La Gaffelière is a wine from Saint-Émilion, but we do not apply, we do not say that it's a first Grand Cru classé. We left the classification. And 3 other very, very famous chateaux did the same thing.
It sounds like Laguna Beach City Hall, if they want to check the parking, and the housing. Well, that's an interesting point, though. Hey, Wine Talks just had a conversation with Jessica Kogan, one of the brightest women in the digital marketing world. She came from Donna Karan, the famed fashion designer, and now in the wine trade, and now moving into consulting with a company called Connect the Dots. And this is one woman that can connect the dots. Have a listen to her. Because I'm not against the classification of 1855, but it certainly has lent itself to establishing pedigree and credibility to a wine. People collect these wines because of their classification. And in this case, if you're willing to leave, and we know there's some very famous chateaux that have, you're basically saying, look, we don't want to play that game. We're going to produce the wines that we like to produce. That we like the wines. We're producing the way we always produce them, but we're not going to play the political game. And guess what? From a marketing standpoint, has it changed anything?
No, the Château La Gaffelière name is strong enough. People know the reputation, the quality of the chateau. They've been knowing it for, again, 300 years. So it's not an issue. You're right, it became political. And we are not going to talk about all the issues that have been going through on the Cru Bourgeois side or the Saint-Émilion side with that 1955 classification. But yeah, we said, okay, enough is enough. Now we're going to just worry about us, make sure that we make fantastic wine, that we keep making fantastic wines. And, basically, excuse my French, but screw the classification.
Coming from a freshman, it says, excuse my French, it's funny. Bordeaux is, in the trade mags now, they're talking about Bordeaux struggling again. That everybody, not everybody, but for the listeners, the 70s were a very bad period for Bordeaux in general, and they came out of it in the late 70s. But there's this whole issue in consumption today. Millennials, Gen Z, they're drinking whatever they're drinking. And I've just been reading, and I just want to get your take on this, that Bordeaux has been affected by some of this change in consumerism.
Well, it's right now the new generation, the kids who are coming, I say kids compared to my age, of course, who are coming into the market and who are starting to drink. I see it with my kids. They are very open. They are actually they are very interesting to watch because they drink anything. What I mean by drinking anything, they are open to drinking anything.
It sounds like my college days. I'll drink anything.
Well, yeah, but
I see what you're saying.
No, but they drink, they taste. They're not afraid to taste wine from anywhere, from any country, from any one region, either in the South Hemisphere, the North, Bordeaux, Burgundy, of course, but also anywhere in Italy, in Spain, in Portugal, in Australia, South America, etc., etc. They don't have any preconceived idea. They don't really care about what their father, grandfather, or were drinking, or parents, I should say. They just try things. I see it with my own kids. They try, and when they find something like that, they just keep drinking it. But they are very open. They explore things, and that is fantastic because they also explore Bordeaux because they don't really know Bordeaux.
Even with their father, in the major thick of the trade, they're not sure about Bordeaux. It's interesting. My kids, my son-in-law loves champagne now, which is a very expensive problem that I created. And I think you're right. They do have a different palette to pull from. They look at other things. If you go to his home bar, I guess you can look at somebody's home bar and say, yeah, this person's eclectic, or their palette is widespread. My middle child, her husband, he only looks for unusual districts and unusual varietals. And I find that fascinating.
Why not? Yeah. Why not?
I don't know. It's just something that's interesting you see.
Nowadays, the market is such that you have millions of labels to choose from.
Yep.
So they don't feel obligated to drink one specific varietal, one specific region. They explore, and I think it's fantastic because that's the best way to build your own palate. And as you build your palate, to basically identify what you really like and what you don't like, and what you want, what you don't want, etc., etc. I think it's the best way to do it.
It's really the only way to do it. And I wonder now. You traveled to Wally's today. You traveled to Wally's for lunch, and I wasn't surprised. It was interesting to me that our lunch that we had together last week was about media, right? Podcasters, event planners, journalists.
Yeah.
But you go all over to. Are you doing dinners? Are they putting together? Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know why my thoughts are not so smooth today, but the concept that I've been peeling back lately, and I think it's really important, in fact, that Jessica Kogan, who I introduced on the show early, we were talking about going back to the experiential, and maybe this is dovetailing right into what you're saying about your kids, the experiential part of wine, where, no longer is it satisfying to buy a bottle of wine on the internet because it was $3, or go to Groupon and buy 12 wines for $36, or listen to somebody's score and buy the wine. And that these kids are experiential. They want to taste it. They want to be part of it. They want the story. They want to go to the dinner. They want to go to the wine shop and taste the wines. You see that?
Big time. That new generation, again, I'm talking about the 18 to 30 or 35, again, compared to us, new young generation, my kids' age, they want, as I was saying earlier, they want to explore, but they want to understand. They ask questions. They are very curious about things, and that is the fascinating thing for us producer, is because they ask questions. They look, they do their homework. They want to understand. They want to taste, and and again they explore. It's fantastic for us wine producers.
Is there staff? I was trying to see if the bunny was out there. Is there staff now? And I don't know how big the company is. I don't want to know the numbers, but I read an article the other day, and they're talking about innovation in the wine trade, which I think is a bunch of horse shit, in my opinion. But innovation, whatever that's supposed to mean, no one can define it. And the article went on to say, well, a winery should understand the demographic of the buyer, and they should go out and do this research. And I was like, most wineries can afford to figure that out. They can't afford to understand who their client is necessarily. They can poll the people that come into their tasting room, but in general, they can't go buy data and then massage the data to figure out who's buying their wines and then go after that clientele. You're here representing the Chateau here, your ears to the ground. What are you telling the people back in the Chateau?
Well, what we try to do basically is to be in direct contact with our consumers as often as possible by doing events like tasting in stores, or by doing dinners, or by doing luncheons, etc., which are very basic tools. We don't believe in putting an ad in any specific magazines or TV or stuff like this. First, we don't have the money anyway for TV. That is.
Well, that's just the point, though.
And again, it's what we want is to talk to our clients, talk to our consumers, and this is the best way to do it. You've got to put the wine in people's mouth. Because I did that a million times over the 30 plus years of my career so far. Is you by putting the wine in the by having the wine tasted and have it on their palate, they can say, oh, I like it or I don't, because that's the only key questions. When I do events, when people ask, they want to talk about stuff, so I answer all the questions, technical or not. But at the end of the day, the key question is, do you like this wine or not? Do you want to drink it or not? The rest doesn't really matter. And as far, I'm sorry, but as far as your the targeting your target audience is very easy. It's basically anybody who drink wine.
I suppose, right?
It is. It is, especially wine. I'm talking about wine. I'm not talking about brands, because there are some what we call label buyers over there, people who basically buy wines based on the label. And that I can understand. People do that when they don't know. So when you don't know, you play safe. You're going to buy your label that you heard of, or someone told you, hey, you should try this brand or that brand or whatever. Okay, I understand when you don't know. But if you have a chance, if, for instance, Wally's is a perfect example. You go to Wally's, which is a very famous, fantastic retailer in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, Santa Monica. You go to those guys and you say, okay, this is the kind of wine I like. Do you have something similar that I should try? And then they're going to ask you, okay, what's your budget? And boom, that's it. So that's the best way to do it. So instead of buying when you can, and most retailers or most restaurateurs have that also with sommeliers. So when you don't know, when you're not sure, I think it's great that you ask a professional, hey, this is what I like, this is my budget, what do you recommend? And go from there.
Okay, so that opens up a whole bunch of stuff.
For
one, yeah. But I completely agree with you, and I think this goes back. And I think you remember I was wearing a jacket at the lunch, the Les Amis de Vin, and that's what that was.
Yeah.
The women would get dressed up there, whether Ming Stoles, Robert Mondavi would come and speak, and my dad would do his things or whatever, and that was the experiential part of wine then, and then they represent the wines. And I think it's going back to that. You did it at lunch with us the other day. But you still have to talk about the soil. We talked about the soil. We're going to talk about the Chardonnay here in a minute. Yeah. But you talk about the soil, and that only catches maybe 5% of the people that are listening. They don't understand the tap root exchange of multi-nutrients.
Sure. Yeah, of course. We don't expect them to.
Right.
But this is for this type of conversation is really for professionals or people who are really interested, who want to go deep into understanding what the terroir is or whatever the question is. But that's fine. What is important is to basically that's a fight that I've been having for 30 years. It's not rocket science here. We're not brain surgeons. It's just wine, okay?
I'm glad you said that.
It's fermented grape juice. So we've got to take a deep breath.
That's
and
really
just
funny.
Enjoy it. So some people in the industry want to use words that nobody understands because it makes them feel, I don't know, whatever. At my age, I don't give a hoot.
Yeah.
Wine is just supposed to be enjoyed. You drink it, you enjoy it. As I was saying earlier, you like it or you don't like it. Nobody gives a hoot.
No, you know what?
It's so. If someone, professionals or not, has a technical question about something, I'll be happy to answer, of course. But I'm not going to talk about this first. I'm not talking about rootstock or clones or volatile acidity or pH because at the end of the day, nobody gives a damn. It's like when you go to restaurants. Are you going to try to find out, how many grams of pepper or many grams of this or what did you you just want to enjoy it.
That's a great analogy.
Well, it's a food and wine,
Well, I know that, but there's the other analogy that I've heard from a guest was, are you going to put ingredients on your wine? And the guy goes, why? Do you go back to the kitchen and ask the chef, what he put in the food? I'm like, yeah, typically not, right?
Yeah,
You're not going to do that.
No, you just enjoy it.
But so there is that group that we have to address that says,
sure,
like, I want to know what the soil's like, and that's important if you're a terroir-driven taster. But it does, and my dad used to say this all the time in the wine shop, like, I don't care. When the salespeople would come into the shop, and I did that every Tuesday for 35 years, tell me the story, great. But let's pour it in the glass and let's find out what all the stories taste like, right? Let's find out what it means, what you just said, and whether you like it. Because this leads me to the points issue. I think it's seen as days. And I use this analogy. There's a wine from an island. It wasn't Sardinia. It was a French island, Italian island. And it was really great.
Sicily?
It was really small. And it was like 95 points. Mm-hmm. But a completely different grape than anybody had ever heard of. I hadn't even heard of it until then. And I loved the wine. It had a component that I thought was really cool. And you may buy a 95-point Cabernet from Napa Valley, and you're going to have two completely different wines. And so somebody that buys on points because it's been recommended in the newspaper, that's not going to solve your palate problem. The way you described it, walking into the wine shop, I usually drink J-Lo, or I usually drink, what's the
Whatever it is.
Yeah. What's the Bordeaux is 1 million cases, a Mouton Cadet. I would like to learn or taste something else.
Yeah.
And then that somm or that wine steward or that retail floor rep takes you to the section based on the budget, and you try something new.
Yeah.
That is the best way.
Yeah, it's like ratings. It's like brands. You buy. Oh, I only buy 90 plus rated wine. Oh, okay, fine, whatever. It's a personal choice, but there is a better way to do it. It's just follow your own palate.
I had a great experience. I took my social networker to the market. This is about a year ago, and we were looking at the shelf. We're trying to shoot some TikTok stuff, and this woman walked up, and I knew her. She knew me. She knew I was in the wine trade. We couldn't remember each other's name, but she said, "I'm looking for something other than what I drink every night."
Sure.
And I'm like, "Yay!"
Yeah, perfect. That's great.
So, talking about that, I was honored and thrilled to join you for lunch of the day, because you released probably the most obscure thing that I've seen in a long time come from the wine trade, and that is a Chardonnay from Bordeaux.
Yeah.
And not only that, the right bank of Bordeaux.
Yeah.
The famed grape, the noble grape of Burgundy, France, and California, grown in a declassified area and presented to America. So there's a lot of questions about that. So Chardonnay from Bordeaux, I never had one before, never even heard of this, and Francois shows up with it. Tell us about this G. It's called G, right?
G, yeah, the letter G. Yeah, it's actually everything started about, I would say, more than 20 years ago, when Alexandre de Mallet-Roquefort, who basically took over the family business with his brother and his sister, he took over the family business by basically doing reevaluating the terroir that his family had been on for generations.
Yeah.
So basically, the La Gaffelière, the property is about 25 hectares, so about 40 whatever acres. And he hired his good friend Stéphane de Renoncourt to do basically analysis of the soil, the subsoil, the varietals, etc., etc. So to not complicate things, he realized that some varietals that had been planted a few years later, or 10, 20, 50, whatever, doesn't matter, were maybe we're not the ideal varietals for this specific plots where that they had on the property.
The regular Bordeaux varietals, the Cabernet Franc or Malbec, whatever it was.
Yeah. So basically, they decided, okay, we want to replant the vineyards. We're going to do Cabernet Franc here, and we're going to do Merlot here. That's basically what they come up with. They realized that this plot was perfect for Cabernet Franc, this one was perfect for Merlot, etc., etc. And when they did that, they also realized that there was one particular plot, a small one, it's about 1 acre, tiny, that they thought was not ideal for either the Merlot or for the Cabernet Franc. So they thought, okay, what can we do with this plot? Because we don't want to mix the grapes from this plot with the rest of the plot that we're using to produce Château La Gaffelière. So because, Alexandre, he's a very, very conscientious person, very honest and conscientious, and he wants to make sure that his wine is perfect. And he didn't want to take a chance of having the grapes from that plot mixed with the juice, the grapes from the other plots, in order to basically, just to mix them and
dilute it almost.
And dilute, exactly. So they decided to basically do something totally different. They declassified that plot, which is a major financial impact, as you can imagine, and they decided to put Chardonnay on it. So first, about the financial impact, you have to know that an acre of vines in the Saint-Emilion classification costs, we're talking about millions of euros. Yeah, it's not cheap.
An acre, planted or unplanted?
Yeah, no, planted. So It's whatever the price is. It's a lot of money. So when you declassify, basically, it has a major impact on the balance sheet.
Let me just stop for a second.
Yeah.
So you have to tell the functioning government association or commission, or maybe the actual government of Saint-Emilion, that we are not going to be producing grapes from this 1 acres that we're going to include in the classified bottling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, you have to tell it. You said, and again, you take the bite on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
So it's financially it's not
suicide.
Insignificant. No, it's not insignificant. Well, again, the family has been there for 300 years. But the most exciting thing is that they decided to plant Chardonnay, which is not a legal white varietal in Bordeaux. They decided to plant that acre with Chardonnay. Why? And that's the fun part. It's because the Château La Gaffelière was basically based, the property that used to belong to Ausonius. Ausonius is a very famous poet from the Roman Empire between 300 and 400 after JC. So Agnus Dei, as we say in the Christian world, AD. And he had himself huge properties in what the region that was called Burgundy back in the days. So basically, and it was on Saint-Emilion. So we know as a fact that Ausonius has its villa at La Gaffelière, that La Gaffelière is where his villa was, because we found some mosaic that dated, that from his era, from his time. And that's parenthesis, and of course, when we found out that those mosaic were real and back from, almost 2,000 years, the French government told us, okay, you've got to put the dirt back on. We cannot do the expansion of the winery the way you wanted to. So it's been like this for 7 years, 7 or 8 years. We're waiting for the French government to do something about it, but that's beside the point.
That's amazing.
That's beside the point. So the point is that this plot is a clay limestone terroir, and we decided to put Chardonnay on it. Why? So because that plot, as we said earlier, was not the best for Merlot and Cabernet Franc. The reason is that clay limestone is also a plot that is cooler than the rest of the property, and Chardonnay likes cooler terroir. And this is why they decided, Alexandre and Stéphane, to basically try and put Chardonnay there. That's the first thing. Our listeners probably know that Chardonnay likes to grow on cooler terroir like Burgundy, Champagne. Those are, clay limestone or chalk terroir. So this one, clay limestone and cooler plot, perfect for Chardonnay. That's the first thing. The second thing that they decided to do is to not use the regular vineyard in Palisades. They put it in. They are growing the vines on échalas. Échalas. It's try to imagine a stick that is about 6 to 7 feet high.
Oh, tall.
7 feet high. Yeah, and the vine will grow around that stick. So it grows vertically instead of being horizontal. Okay, so that's how the Romans used to grow vines back in the day. Échalas, ECHALATS for plural. So I invite your listener to look at on Google, anywhere on the internet, to look at échalas, and they'll see it's a stick, and again the vine grows around it. And this is a very interesting concept because it allows the grape, the cluster, to basically face very different exposure. North, south, east, west. So on one stick, you're gonna have different maturity for the cluster when you harvest.
Yeah,
that's one thing. It's very exciting. The third thing that they did, the third original decision that they made, again, Alexandre and Stéphane, and here we're getting a little technical, is we're using clones that are very popular in Burgundy, like the 1066. We're also using the 548 and the 148. So that's very technical for the listeners. I won't go too far in too much details, but the clones those are Chardonnay clones, because Chardonnay is not Chardonnay. Depending of the clone of the Chardonnay clone that you are using, you're gonna have either smaller berries or bigger berries. You're gonna have a higher production or a smaller production, etc., etc. And that depends on the clone that you're using. And so we are combining 3 different clones that give us the option to basically blend based on what the clone gonna produce. So it's really exciting, especially when you're a winemaker, because you are given lots of different options to choose from. It's because, again, Chardonnay is not Chardonnay. You have 10, 15 different Chardonnay to blend together in order to produce the wine that we are producing.
It's kind of interesting. Let me just stop there for a second. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. For one, because the clones are so different, and some are going to be more acidic, some have smaller berries, some ripen sooner, some ripen later, that you're actually, even though it's a single varietal in the bottle, as a winemaker, you're blending, just like you're blending, let's say, for a Saint-Emilion Rouge. It's just you're doing something to get a better, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yes, right? It's very much like champagne. In Champagne, the being born and raised in Champagne, I know a little bit about Champagne. Champagne is about blending different varietal from different cru villages from different years. So here it's about the same thing. We are blending different Chardonnay from that plot, and what's gonna make it very, very, very unusual is that the first bottle G that you tasted is a blend of 1 year, but the next one will be a blend of 2 years, and the next one after that will be a blend of 3 different years. So as the years gonna go by, we will always blend 2, 3, maybe 4, vintages, in order to have a consistent one that will be year after year better than the previous wine.
That was I have to say, it was one of the craziest things. Being a retailer by trade and understanding the general marketplace, I hope I understand something after all those years, 17 million bottles worth. You just hit on it. I want to remind you of this question I had at lunch, which is you've got, first of all, you're growing a grape in an area that's never been grown before, and so you're really starting from scratch, though you understand the general characteristic of each clone. You're not sure what this vineyard is going to do with each one of those clones, and so you have to build your own database of information or terroir in your head to understand what's going to be in the bottle. So now you're no longer Saint-Emilion, you're not even Bordeaux, you're Vin de France.
Correct.
Which would have been what the old days, top
Vin de France, bottom, at the very bottom.
Yeah, but the old days it was Vino Tableau, something. Okay. Then now you're going to blend vintages, which in America would be a non-vintage wine, which I would have stayed away from in my career when I was buying wine. But what I tasted that Wednesday was elegant, complex, minerality, all the things you look for in a premium Chardonnay, particularly from the Bordeaux, Burgundy region, not as much from California necessarily, but that's fascinating that you're able to take what would have been competing elements with the marketplace, put them in a bottle, and people are flocking to it.
Well, the fun part is, again, it comes from Alexandre, the owner of Château La Gaffelière, who is he's very bold. He's not afraid to take risk and to take a chance and to try new things. Lots of Bordeaux chateaus and owners are basically still live in the past. They're afraid to do things, to make changes for whatever reasons. Some might be good reason or whatever. Alexandre is not. Alexandre is not afraid to do new things, to try new things. And for Bordeaux, I think he's a fantastic ambassador of Bordeaux because, again, he is bringing new products, new ideas to Bordeaux. And that's fantastic for Bordeaux.
I can see that because I had this conversation today with a Washington State winemaker and his whole premise. But we're talking a little bit more about radical packaging and really consumer trend changes rather than sort of appellation and philosophical changes as you're doing. And I think that maybe that's the kind of innovation that people are talking about. And I don't think they know they're talking about it, but maybe that's the type of innovation we're talking about, where we're trying to get new varietals from new areas, create new senses, create new flavor profiles, test things and see how they go.
Well, for us in France, and especially particularly Bordeaux, the French, they suck at marketing most of the time, at least in the wine industry. I'm talking about globally in the wine. They're doing better. They're getting better. The Champenois are the best,
yes,
for sure.
They're pros.
The Burgundy rely on fantastic brands that they have built over the years, and that's also fantastic. Bordeaux, you have, I would say 20, 25, maybe 30 labels that are very well-known, very famous worldwide, but the rest, they struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably need to do something, and that's up to them to do. But as far as Alexandre and La Gaffelière is concerned, the idea is not to come up with fancy labels, fancy name, fancy whatever, marketing stuff. It's about a wine that is extremely different, extremely unusual, that very rare, and in a way, that's also what lots of wine consumers want, is to want to try something different, something new, something that, hey, I never had that before. I didn't even know it exists. That's the fun part.
Well, that's why I showed up. But it's an acre, so I don't know what your yield is. A ton, 2 tons per acre that you're getting.
We'll probably at the most we'll do 1,500 bottles.
Okay, so now it's 1,500 bottles worldwide.
Yes.
Logistics.
Yes.
Where does that end up? I mean, Wally's got what, 100 bottles or something?
Yeah, they got about 140 bottles, something like this.
Okay, so 12 cases.
But it doesn't matter. It's like, some other high-end products. Not everybody wants to drink it.
No, but you sell it worldwide. This 1,500 bottles are most of the states of France?
We only sell them to a few key partners.
Yeah.
Because we cannot supply the whole world. So we'd rather supply it to. This is why we have that partnership with Wally's, because they have the clientele that can understand and that want also to try new things, very unusual things. If you put a wine like this in the middle of nowhere, people don't know. They're gonna see a bottle, weird bottle, beautiful bottle actually, gorgeous bottle with the G engraved on it. But when I see the tag price, then I think, oh, you cannot just. And I wish you could, sell it everywhere. But first, we don't have the quantity.
It was a beautiful bottle, and I'm trying to describe it. I don't know the bottle shape. It's almost Rhone-like to a certain part of the Rhone. They used to use a squattier.
It's very close to the way bottles used to be produced 1,000 years ago.
It's almost like you put your hand on the neck and a Burgundy bottle, and you just squished it down a little bit.
Yeah, it's rounder at the bottom.
Yeah.
It's actually a copy of how the first bottles were ever made.
Let's talk about that marketing for a second. If I live in Bordeaux, I'm a Bordelaise. If I live in Champagne, I'm a Champenois? No, that's
Champenois.
Okay.
Bordelais and
Bourguignon.
Bourguignon. And Champenois.
Un Champenois. Donc.
Champenois.
Fabulous, and I had a vendor here. Her name was Claire Boray. She was born and raised in Champenois as well, and she was one of the great vendors in Los Angeles. She moved back to the south of France and started growing grapes. So if she's listening, hi Claire. But you said something important. I think this is really important when it comes to marketing of wine. And you said the French aren't necessarily that great at it, but they've done a great job, like you said, with Champagne in the romanticism of bubbly wine. And I mean that because from a brand value standpoint, look at Veuve Clicquot, look at Tétanger, Boulanger, all the big houses. They make, I think, what is Veuve Clicquot, like 1 million bottles or some crazy number?
More than that.
Yeah, okay.
More than that.
But you feel like you're buying something very special.
Yeah, they did a very good job on the marketing, but it didn't happen overnight.
No.
You have to understand that this brand was built by people that nobody heard of. I know some of them, but it became a marketing wine. But initially it was built by a lady, who basically had fantastic help people who travel the world to promote the wine. And it's basically the case for every champagne houses. The champagne houses are where they are today because 250 years ago, people traveled the world to promote the wines from Champagne.
That's a true story.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
If you look at all the big names, you're talking about Clicquot, but you could say that about the major champagne brands. It was based on people traveling. That's a big difference between the Champenois and many other wine regions in France. Is in Champagne, we were not afraid to travel the world. Roeder is a good example. Laurent Perrier is obviously a good example. Charles Heidsieck. Everybody in the US knew Champagne Charlie back, at the beginning of the 1900s, in the mid 1900s. So those brands were built by people. People built those brands, and now, as they became part of luxury companies or more global companies, marketing took over. But at the beginning, it's people.
It's an interesting part of that story because Madame Clicquot was not the most attractive thing you've ever seen.
No, that's for sure.
That's
for sure.
But she was a businesswoman, and she had a lot of struggles before she got to where she's at. But one of the poignant things that comes out of her story that I think is fascinating and still true today, and that is, that she sent people out to go sell, but she had 2 cuvées, at least one for the Russians and one for the English. And that means that she was addressing the consumers, what they wanted to taste when they bought wine.
Yeah, you can say the same thing with water, with Cristal. The emperor, everybody knows the story about the emperor wanted to have a see-through glass so he could see if it would be poison or whatever, and a flat bottom. There are stories for you with every champagne houses. That's the fun.
But the point that illustrates to me is that it is about the consumer, always has been. And so we produce things that the consumers want, and maybe that's why we see what we see at the supermarket. But we hope that they venture into interesting things like this Chardonnay G, or the Chateau's, the Bordeaux Rouge, that expresses something other than just a consumer palate. Now, my dad's wine shop, to be more articulate, we carried all the mainstream stuff. Lancers back then, Matus back then, Gallo Rhine wine, Gallo, Burgundy. I know it's against the law. And we even had California. They still said champagne on the bottles. But then we could move them to the next rack, which was when my dad started. That in the 70s, that was just beginning to grow. And that's what we hope to happen, is that people come to the table and see something that they think is interesting. Somebody at Wally's shows them this Chardonnay, and they go, wow, this
everything
is pretty cool.
comes with tasting. You have to taste people, because I could tell you stories back in the mid-90s when I was representing building a champagne brand. I talked to clients, to stores, restaurants, and I was introducing a rosé champagne. People didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
The 90% of the market was brut. So it's by tasting that you can explain things. And it's the beauty of being a consumer, and especially a new consumer, when you just start getting into wine, champagne, you want to taste. Don't
go
be
to
afraid to
tastings, local street, local store, restaurants.
Any chance you have.
Listen to the psalm.
Yeah.
I had a buyer in my old shop. He was very talented at A, buying, and B, listening to the consumer say, this is what I usually drink. I drink Druckhorn Merlot. What would you recommend? And he was very good at taking what inventory he had in his mind that we had in the store and applying that customer's palate. And we're almost out of time here, but I did want to bring this up because there's this whole other movement going on, which is change the language of wine. And so I went back today, actually, and looked at some old magazines from the 70s, from Les Amis de Vin, no less, and was reading them, and they said the same thing. They tried to describe a wine based on the fruit impressions or the spice impressions or the acid impressions. And I guess that means something different for everybody. But I don't understand what it means to change the language of wine. What are you going to change it to? And how do you make it more approachable? Is that possible? Or it's kind of old and embedded in part of our culture, the way you describe a thing. And then the more you taste, the more you understand.
You've got to use simple words that everybody going to understand.
Yeah.
You, like in any business, you've got people with huge ego and who feel the need to speak in such a way that you don't understand what they are talking about.
On
They
purpose.
describe the wine with crazy words, crazy name, whatever. You don't listen to these people.
Right.
You want to use basic words that everybody understands.
I mean, is the intimidation ever going to be removed?
Well,
Is really
hopefully,
the
yes.
question.
Hopefully. And that's why the new generation is great. I look at what we do. At La Gaffelière, we have an entry-level one, which is called Comtesse de Malais Roquefort. That is the entry-level in our world. It's basically Merlot and Cabernet Franc. We say, okay, Comtesse, it's a wine. You're thirsty. You want to have a fun glass of red or fun glass of white, because we do white and red. Just drink it. Just enjoy it. It's a wine for thirst. You're thirsty. Just drink it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to be shishi poo poo and try to take the glass, analyze it for 2 hours, and describe the sex of the angels. Nobody gives a damn about this. It's a great wine. It's a great red. Drink it. Have fun.
Funny.
It's even not. It's what, $13 or $14.
I wish I'd known about a
it's
Bordeaux
nothing.
Blanc that was that price range, because they're very hard to find.
No, it's very easy. You go to Pavilions next door, they have it.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's just an example that we make one that are more sophisticated, but it's also depend on your palate. Because if you're happy with a wine at $14, this is great.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a learning process. You have to build your palate.
That was part of the conversation today with Charles Smith from Walla Walla, Washington. He's produced nothing but unadulterated wines since the beginning. That's how he started with his first 300 cases. And he's built his brand around this philosophy that I'm going to produce something that is expressive of where it is. And by the way, it doesn't have to be expensive to be good.
No.
That's not the point. You can make really good wines that are solid, that people enjoy. And I think that's great that you're deliberately avoid the expletives and the conversation and the points and all the stuff that goes with the intimidation of wine in our culture.
You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to have a good bottle of wine. That Comtesse de Malais Roquefort, white or red, at $13, $14 is great.
That's great.
We're talking about champagne. You have a champagne brand which is called Charles de Cazeneuve. It's $30.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic champagne.
Yeah.
And it's a true one. It's not it's not sparkling from wherever. It's a true champagne.
So
it's the same thing, same idea.
I guess that's brand value is what we chase, and it takes a lot of deep pockets to create a brand, and it doesn't always work. In fact, most of the time it doesn't. But here, these big brands have created mystery around what they've done, and there are these great champagnes. I tasted a lot of inexpensive, authentic champagne that I thought was really good, but man, to get traction is almost impossible.
Takes time.
It just takes time.
Takes time.
Well, we're out of time.
Hey, then that's it.
Having me in your home to do this. I'm so happy we had a chance to sit down and do it. We tried to do it last week, but it was going to be too complicated. But I wish you all luck in your travels and tastings.
Paul.
And
thank you.
We will be in Bordeaux on 28th, so we'll talk about that. I have 12 people. Moi et mon grande bouche.
Wow.
Yeah.
11 people.
Stupid.
That
anyway.
should be fun. That should be fun.
Wait a minute. Somebody might be listening to this. Cheers.